Well, all eyes are on the elections coming up in just a few short weeks, and what a roller coaster ride it has been. The presidential race has consumed much of the media coverage, but we also need to think about the other races, both state and federal, that will have a major impact on the way that we live. One thing is for sure, sitting out this election is not an option for believers. Debbie Wuthnow is president of iVoterGuide, a division of American Family Association Action, and she's with us today to talk about a powerful resource that can help you make wise decisions on Election Day. Debbie, welcome.
I'm glad I'm here.
Give us an update on where you are in your work with iVoterGuide, because we're just 7 weeks away from the election. Where are you in all of your data collection and all of that?
Well, we've got a lot of the data in place. What we're in the process of doing is evaluating all the candidates.
Okay.
I would call it a tsunami of candidate evaluations.
Wow.
When we look at hundreds of candidates, since we're covering all the way down to state legislative level in so many states. There are hundreds of candidates we are in the process of evaluating as we create our general election voter guides. So we've released about a third of the general election voter guides so far. We should be about halfway done by the end of September. And it's just it's a huge task as we dig through all the data and assign that accurate rating to every candidate that really helps the average voter know where each candidate stands.
You know, to call this a voter guide just seems like an understatement. A voter guide, you think of a pamphlet with a few, of 2 or 3 foldouts. You are evaluating not only the candidate's history, but what they believe. And that's intriguing to me because if you want to make a wise choice for a candidate on whatever level, to get into their minds and to know what they believe is really a level of analysis that we haven't seen before.
And it's done very prayerfully and very diligently, and it's really based upon their actions. I mean, the thing that reveals what people believe is what they do. Because they'll say one thing, but sometimes they do something different. So that's what all the data is there, is to help us to see what they've done, what their policies have been, what their actions have been, and to intuit from that and their survey answers where they believe and how they will vote if they're elected.
Yeah, you've been on the Stand Radio with me before. For those who have not been familiar with iVoterGuide, tell us what it is once again. It's not a printed pamphlet that you hand out. What is iVoterGuide exactly?
iVoterGuide is a website. You go to iVoterGuide.com and you enter your address and you get a personalized ballot. It is very easy to use, but yet it's deeper and wider than any other voter guide you've seen. As you've said, it's not that pamphlet with 2 or 3 candidates and 5 or 6 issues. We look at their campaign finance data. We look at how they voted if they've held office at either the federal or the state legislative level. We've gathered their endorsements. We've gathered links to their website and their social media so you can see every piece of intelligence we can find about that candidate, including who they've given money to as an individual and their survey answers. And on top of that, to make it really easy to use is that evaluation, as we've talked about, that we show on a gas gauge. So it is not like your mother's voter guide. You really have to check it out yourself to understand it.
All right. Well, most people, of course, tend to be focused on the presidential race, and understandably so. But there are other important races and issues that are covered by iVoterGuide. What are some of those?
Well, we start by covering all the federal races, so president and Senate and Congress, because all of Congress is up and a third of Senate. But in 36 states, we're covering statewide races. So that includes governors, attorney generals, secretary of states, state board of education, even state supreme courts, Court of Appeals. So those statewide offices that really impact both at the executive and the judicial branch, what happens in that state. And beyond that, we're covering state legislative races, so state Senate, state House, in 32 states. And beyond that, we're covering some school board races in about 11 states, some key school board races, because sometimes those even run nonpartisan. I mean, it's so hard to get information to vote wisely on those school board candidates, but yet they have so much power over the curriculum and what is taught to our children. We're doing some city council races. And then the thing that I'm most excited about is ballot measures.
Okay.
We've seen what's happened in that arena, and iVoterGuide really seeks to get to the truth about what each one not only says, but what it means and what it'll do and who's supporting each side.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because ballot initiatives are worded in such a convoluted way. It's hard to know, do I vote for this or against it? So iVoterGuide is going to explain what this ballot initiative is and help you understand so that you don't go in uninformed.
Exactly. So, I've been in the ballot. I'm sure you have before. You walk in and read it and you go, well, what does that mean?
I'm not an attorney.
Right. And they're worded by attorneys, and sometimes in language that can be interpreted in ways that we don't expect. So what we do is we look at the arguments in favor, the arguments opposed, who's given money to each side, who's endorsed each side, and then we try to encapsulate that into what does a yes vote mean? What does a no vote mean? And which one's conservative and which one's liberal?
That's good. Debbie, what do you say to people who have a real bitter taste in their mouths over the negativity and personal attacks, especially on the presidential level, and they feel like, I'm just not going to vote at all? And there are a lot of those people, and they're well-meaning people. But I just take a moment and speak to them in terms of iVoterGuide and their responsibilities.
Well, I look at it as a biblical responsibility. God calls us to be good stewards of everything he gives us. And as an American, being a salt and light in participating in government is a responsibility that we have as American citizens. We can't be salt and light, can't hide your light under a bushel. You've got to let your voice be heard. The way that the country goes, as much as we maybe don't want it, happens at the government. And we need to elect people who share our values and will fight for those freedoms or are more closely aligned with our values. We're not going to get 100%, right? We just have to get to somebody who's more closely aligned with our biblical values on as many issues or as many policies. And I would vote not on the personality of the person. I'm not voting for a pastor. I'm not voting for a neighbor. I'm voting for what will they do? What are their policies? What have they done to show me what they're going to do in the future? Because candidates will say one thing and do something else. So look what they've done and be a good steward and do it with information, not emotion. Mm-hmm. And that's what iVoterGuide provides you, is that information to vote wisely.
And like you said, it's not just the presidential race. That's one small part of what's going on Election Day. I mean, a lot of state lawmakers are going to determine laws that make a real difference in how we live our lives and how our kids are handled at school and any number of things.
Actually, those races further down the ballot actually impact you more directly than the president and the Congress, because they're setting your tax rate. They're setting those curriculum for kids. So it's really important that you vote for all of those races and do it as be a good steward.
Now, tell us about some of the ways that you've designed iVoterGuide to be a resource for people who want to be a catalyst for their friends and family members to become active citizens. What sort of resources are there at iVoterGuide?
Well, we have a bunch of resources. So we have a voter guide, but we also have some take action items. So if you go to iVoterGuide.com, and in the top menu bar, you'll see Take Action and scroll down. We've got resources for you to share with your church or with your neighborhood. It could be postcards. It could be yard signs. It could be maybe that you sign up for our email list, because we send you educational emails once a week just telling you about what does the Secretary of State do? What does the Bible say about immigration or parental rights? And it's designed to be short, informational, and shareable so that you find it helpful and you share it with your friends and your family. So they not only become more engaged on, informed on the issues, but then they are aware of iVoterGuide when it's time to vote. So we've got links for you to register to vote. We've got find your polling place. Really, iVoterGuide is a one-stop resource of educational content, resources to share, and everything you need to know to vote wisely and to show up at the polls on time.
All right, super. Well, a lot of you who are listening are already engaged and involved, but I tell you what, iVoterGuide is a tool that you can use to be a hub of activity for your friends and neighbors. So you can take this information and take your friend and neighbor by the hand and say, come on, let's go vote, and use iVoterGuide to do that. Debbie Wuthnow, president of iVoterGuide, great work. Congratulations on such a wonderful resource, and thank you for being with us.
It was my pleasure.